UFC 279 Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz. Full card prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zahn, I go by Harris as usual. Fight by fight breakdowns and analysis from that betting perspective specifically. So we want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. For this UFC 279 pay-per-view event, 13 fights overall. We have 8 of them happening on the prelims, 5 of them happening on the pay-per-view main card. So let's get right to work with fight number 1. We're looking at Darian Weeks versus Yohan Lainesse. Darian Weeks, 0-2 in the UFC now at this point. He lost to Ian Gary back in April. Pretty diverse striker. He has a Muay Thai stance. He's going to kind of stand in front of you for the most part. Not really much movement out of him. Kind of wants to fight from center of the octagon as well. He does close distance pretty well. I notice his hands aren't really the most active. I know the numbers would sort of suggest otherwise, but I noticed that he takes maybe a bit more of that counterpuncher role. The striking technique is solid though. Steady, kind of lacks that extra gear from what I've seen from him, but steady could also be a good thing. I've seen good takedown IQ from him. Wouldn't really call him the most overwhelming wrestler, but he has some numbers to his name. Of course, only 2 UFC fights, but 2.5 per at almost 50% accuracy. I've seen him use some clinch work to at least attempt takedowns, if nothing else. So pretty solid fighter despite his 0-2 record in the UFC. And he's going up against Yohan Lainesse, lost to Gabe Green in his debut. That was back in April. Striking really isn't the cleanest coming out of Yohan Lainesse, but definitely has good power, definitely willing to engage. He can switch stance as well. He has a good jab, wants to be that fighter coming forward, wants to be the fighter controlling the center of the octagon, and appears to have that wrestling as well. I've seen him actively shoot for takedowns in some of his fights, even before his time in the UFC. Decent top control to go along with it. There are some question marks with his cardio. He definitely slows down as the fight goes on. I'm going back and forth on this one. I mean, the odds are, of course, really close for a reason. I do think Darian Weeks will be the higher level striker here. I think he's better technically. I think the striking is cleaner. I think Lainesse has maybe a toughness advantage, and will probably have the bigger moments in the fight. While I feel Weeks has maybe a key cardio advantage, again, I feel like those bigger moments, especially with the crowd reaction, will be the difference maker for Yohan Lainesse. I feel that Darian Weeks might win the overall striking battle, but again, with those bigger moments siding with Lainesse, the rounds will kind of slightly go in his favor. So again, I'm predicting a really close fight either way. Definitely don't want to bet on this. Don't have any interest in betting on this. Close fight, but I think Yohan Lainesse a bit tougher, and I think that toughness will be the decision maker, even though he has a cardio disadvantage. So I'm going with the underdog, Yohan Lainesse, to get things started.
Okay. So, yeah, this fight, man, is a good fight to start the card. They're putting in their heavy-handed Yohan Lainesse. Again, not the best striking technically, but this guy is effective. He knows what he's doing. There's a method to his madness, and he has that touch of death, right? That could just put a guy out. Darian Weeks looks like he's going to have the better cardio in this fight, but he fights at a slow pace. Now, I don't think he's the better striker, but he fights at a much slower pace. He's going to try to get takedowns. He's going to have the wrestling advantage, and he could get takedowns as the fight goes on because Yohan Lainesse, his cardio did not hold up in his last fight. However, I did see a fight in TKO where he went 3 rounds. In the third round, he's egging his opponent on, and he's going hard in the third round. So it was his first fight when he showed the cardio issues. I seen in TKO he had pretty good cardio there. I think in this fight he's going to catch Darian Weeks early, and I think he's going to put him away. I just think he's the better fighter overall. But again, the cardio is a big concern here. I'm going to go with Yohan Lainesse being the more dangerous guy. But again, I'm with Harris. This is a tough fight because it's a contrast of styles. If Darian Weeks gets his takedowns going, wins the first 2 rounds, gasses out Yohan, Yohan's going to be in problems. But on the other side, Yohan can easily land a bomb here, just like he did against Gabe Green. And Gabe Green fought Daniel Rodriguez, who couldn't put him away. Lainesse was pretty close. Lainesse dropped him, I think, once or twice in that fight. So his power is definitely on a different level. And I think it's going to show in this fight. So I'm going to go Yohan Lainesse, but contrast of styles, it is a tough fight to kind of figure out which way the fight's going to go.
Fight number 2, we're looking at Melissa Martinez versus Elise Reed. Melissa Martinez, undefeated newcomer, almost 3 years since her last competition, though. I think that's pretty interesting given the fact that she's only 25 years old. She's a southpaw striker. She has a solid jab, good boxing overall for this division, at least based on what I anticipate. Solid Muay Thai as well. I think she has decent footwork, decent movement. I like her ability to pressure, kind of close distance as well, with some pretty active striking. Otherwise, expect for her to fight from range. Either way, I kind of like her work rate, and that was what I noticed about her the most in her previous fights that I saw. Again, though, 22 years old at that time, 25 years old now, 3-year layoff. So how does she look now? Does she look improved? Is she more of the same? Of course, there's going to be some question marks regarding that. And she's going up against Elise Reed, who lost to Sam Hughes back in May. A bit hard to get a read on her because she's been inconsistent in 3 UFC performances so far. She likes to keep the fight on the feet. She's patient. She has a solid IQ. I like her jab. I think she has a well-timed right straight as well. Decent kicks. Lousy takedown defense. Doesn't really offer much defense against the takedowns. And in terms of numbers, she's given up 7 takedowns in her last 2 fights. I think it's really interesting. I'm noticing something from UFC here, bringing over a lot of Mexican prospects over these past few weeks. And I can't ignore that they've looked pretty solid in their fights, win, lose, or draw. That said, or to that point, I should say, I can see Melissa Martinez having a speed advantage, a footwork advantage in this fight. But this fight, of course, is very tough. I think neither fighter really makes a compelling case to run away with the fight. So it really could just be about who shows up that night. But I kind of like the trend here. So I like the Mexican newcomer. Again, I think the footwork, the movement, the work rate, I think she's going to put up a pace that Elise Reed doesn't really want to see. I think Elise Reed likes a more technical fight where she can counterpunch and kind of, show her style, so to speak. And I think Melissa Martinez is going to give her a higher pace that she's not going to want. So I'm going with the newcomer. I get why she's a favorite. I think she's pretty steep as a favorite, as a newcomer. But nonetheless, I'm going to side with Melissa Martinez.
Oh, man. Okay. So, I like this fight, believe it or not, even though it's a really low level match we got here. But I think it's a good fight to see where Melissa Martinez is at. Super melee fighting out of Combate. I was following her career. She's undefeated, but I think she lost against that Desiree Yanez fight. I'm almost guaranteed she lost that fight, but she got the judges' help there. But in that fight, she did show me some things. Yanez was able to use some grappling in that fight. But Martinez showed me, Super Melee showed me good heart, good cardio in that fight. Being held on the ground, she was still fighting in the later rounds. And showed that she had no issues with that cardio. And that's going to be a big thing in this fight. Elise Reed has bad cardio. Elise Reed is well-rounded. She's okay everywhere. She has an okay grappling game, an okay striking game. But my issue with Elise Reed is she's not mean enough. She seems too nice in there. She looks like a babysitter. I don't think she's going to get this one done here. I think Super Melee, first round could be shaky. But as the fight goes on, her cardio, her heart, her will to win this fight, she's not going to have to deal with that heavy wrestling that she dealt with in the Yanez fight. So I think Melissa gets this done, but you got to be careful. Melissa has been out of action for a couple of years. So it could be a situation where she's rusty, or it could be a situation where she comes back better than ever. And I think she gets this one done here. Elise Reed hasn't really shown me much to show me danger. And I think Melissa Martinez, as the fight goes on, gets this one done.
Third fight, Chad Anheliger versus Alateng Heili. Anheliger, 10-fight win streak now after beating Jesse Strader in his debut back in February. Looks comfortable on the feet, a lot of movement, decent jab, quick hands, good in and out movement. I feel like his pace, his activity specifically could be a little bit better, but his IQ is solid. Presses forward pretty well. Takedown defense isn't that good based on his debut, but again, pretty solid on the feet. Alateng Heili beat Kevin Kroon back in April. Solid overall striker. He's a dynamic striker, really comfortable on the feet. His hands are quick as well. He has good timing, good counter punching specifically, good power as well, especially with that overhand right. But really just look for that one dimension out of him, right? Really just look for that boxing out of him in terms of the striking. I think this is going to be a good striking match in general. I know Alateng Heili has some takedown numbers as well, but I'm anticipating a striking match here. I do think either guy has the opportunity to win. I'm looking for Anheliger to have the better movement, maybe use the striking a bit more effectively. But I feel like Alateng Heili is going to fight from center, is going to put the pressure on. I feel like he's going to have the bigger striking moments in this fight. I like Alateng Heili for this. Wasn't really too impressed with Anheliger in his debut. I mean, until he caught Jesse Strader, he didn't look that good. I mean, he didn't look amazing at least, right? Whereas Alateng Heili has a consistency that I feel that I can trust a lot more. And again, I think that Alateng Heili is going to be able to time Anheliger on the feet, potentially knock him out. So again, I think Alateng Heili, bigger striking threat, and is going to be able to use Anheliger's movement against him to potentially lend that big counter striking opportunity. Alateng Heili is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is hard, man. This fight's a really hard fight. I think Chad Anheliger is a legit fighter. Good movement. I think he's going to be the better striker in this fight. If it stays on the feet, I think Anheliger is going to run away with a decision here. However, he does have issues with the grappling, the takedowns. He has horrible takedown defense. He's not even sprawling on these guys. It's like he figures out the takedowns too late. Guys are able to get in on him, and I'm seeing this in earlier fights as well, not just the fight he had against Jesse Strader. But yeah, overall, his striking looks smooth. He looks like he's a smart fighter. He's gonna be able to mix in the different strikes, and he should win the striking battle, in my opinion. When I look at Haile Alateng, this guy has power, but he's kind of too patient for me. I wish he was a bit more aggressive, but he does have power. He knows what he's doing. He's good at counters. He wades you in, and then he explodes. But one thing that he does have that makes him the more well-rounded guy in this fight is that high level wrestling. This guy, people forget at one point this guy was third, fourth, or fifth ranked Chinese wrestler for their Olympic team. He didn't make the team, but he was top five at one point for China. And China is a strong wrestling country. They do have some good wrestlers out there. They can grapple out there. So Haile Alateng, if he goes to his wrestling, and Anheliger has shown he can't stop these takedowns. If he does that for 2 rounds, I think he gets the win here. So my gut's telling me Chad's gonna win the fight, but I gotta go with my head on this one here. It's a tough fight as far as betting goes. I wouldn't place a bet, but I'm gonna go with Haile Alateng here because again, he can hang in the striking, and on the ground, he has a massive advantage with the wrestling. So you should be able to dictate the fight that way. But yeah, so Haile Alateng is my pick here.
Fight number 4 of our prelims, the end of the early prelims. We're looking at Norma Dumont versus Danyelle Wolf. Norma Dumont lost to Macy Chiasson back in May. Switch stance a little bit, pretty light on her feet. She uses that leg kick a lot. Respectable in the stand-up with some pop in her punches. Definitely looks comfortable on the feet. She has good feints, good in and out movement as well. Really good jab, and she can land pretty solid combinations. She's typically the fighter coming forward, closing distance, uses a good strong clinch to that point against the cage, grappling and ground specialist. Don't forget, she has good takedowns as well. Numbers don't necessarily support that. I mean, only 1 takedown per, but she is pretty good on the ground. Her last fight was interesting because historically she's shown really decent takedown defense, but in that fight, it just didn't look good at all. So I'm not really sure what to think of her in that department anymore. I don't think I can necessarily trust her takedown defense anymore. But again, I've seen it look really good, and then in her last fight, it just went out the window. I don't think it'll matter too much in this fight though. She's going up against Danyelle Wolf, a very interesting MMA fighter in that she's 1-0. She's 39 years old, but she is a former pro boxer. I don't remember what her boxing record was. I don't think it was that amazing. Something like 20 wins, 10 losses, something like that. So nothing crazy, but nonetheless, former pro boxer. Just one MMA fight that was on Dana White Contender Series. That was 2 years ago. So unsurprisingly, she does have good boxing. She has a good jab. She uses it pretty regularly. Good 1-2 combinations. Her overhand right is pretty solid, but fairly basic, right? Not really much diversity in her striking or in her game plan or really just in her overall MMA ability. Norma Dumont, although she disappointed me big time in her last fight, again, especially with that takedown defense and almost more than that, her effort just looked really lousy. Despite all of that, I think she just has too many advantages in this fight. She has the experience advantage, of course, the striking diversity advantage, the takedown advantage, the grappling advantage, the ground game advantage. I think this is too big of a step up in competition for Danyelle Wolf. I mean, don't forget, Norma Dumont, not to say she was being pushed for a title, but I think if she beat Chiasson, she wouldn't be too far away from it. And here we have Danyelle Wolf as a 1-0 newcomer who last competed on Dana White Contender Series 2 years ago. So I think that's just too big of a step up in competition. I think Norma Dumont has too many advantages here. And I mean, she should be all but guaranteed to win this fight.
Yeah, this is pretty clear cut here, but Danyelle Wolf can cause issues in this fight here. She's 5'11". She's big, man. She's a big girl. Um, she has that boxing pedigree, so she could definitely win the fight with the striking. If this stays on the feet, if they want to strike this out. But Norma has a more well-rounded game here. She has that jujitsu, and I think that's a big thing here. Just getting a single leg, getting to the mat, doing this over the first 2 rounds is going to slow down Wolf, and all that pop's going to be gone. So I got to go with Norma Dumont. I'm not confident as in that fight she had against Macy Chase, and she kind of let me down in that fight. It's okay if you lose. It's just kind of how you lose, and she didn't show me that fight, that heart that I thought she had, right? So, but I think this is a fight that she could win here, fighting a 39-year-old as well. She should get this one done. So I'm gonna go with Norma Dumont, winning a boring decision here.
Finishing off the early prelims, moving on to our regular prelims and fight number 5 of the overall prelims. We're looking at Jake Collier versus Chris Barnett. Jake Collier had that split decision loss to Andrei Arlovsky back in April. I remember that being a very close fight. He's light on his feet as a heavyweight, decent movement around the ring. He'll switch stance as well. He really likes that calf kick. Good fakes, good level changes, pretty good jab. Gonna have a reach advantage in this one that he'll definitely take advantage of. He has a lot of head movement, a lot of bobbing and weaving. The hands are decent. The combinations are pretty decent as well. The clinch is also decent. Stays pretty active within it. Had decent control time in his last fight. He can even land the takedown. Nothing crazy in terms of his takedown average numbers, but you look at his last 2 fights, he's had 3 takedowns landed in those 2 fights. So definitely has that ability. Chris Barnett, on the other hand, lost to Martin Boudet back in April as well. I think that was on the same card. For his size, moves really well. Pretty good athlete. He's a southpaw on the feet, switch stance type of effect. I know it mentions orthodox there. Good low kicks. He fights from the outside. Just no real game plan to his style. I think he's a little bit more flash than rather than effectiveness. I think he's pretty easy to control against the cage. Just doesn't really have an answer for it. Um, I'll keep it short. I mean, I'm Jake Collier all day on this one. I think outside of a heavyweight beware, where anything can happen in a heavyweight fight, we saw Chris Barnett do that in the UFC. Outside of that heavyweight beware, I think Collier is just more effective on the feet, better hands, He's just as agile. He moves just as well. I think his cardio is better, and I think he can use the clinch to his advantage, especially against Chris Barnett, to slow Chris Barnett down early in the fight and just kind of use it throughout to really just kind of make it unanimous. I don't see Jay Collier having a problem winning this one, but of course it is a heavyweight beware, so I can't put a guaranteed stamp of approval on it. But nonetheless, Jay Collier is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this could be an exciting fight, or it could be a really boring, sloppy fight. Um, Collier, in this fight, he's gonna be the bigger guy, 6'3". He's gonna be able to hold Chris Barnett against the cage. Barnett clearly doesn't have the physical strength to push the guys off of him. He's 5'9", 265 pounds. He has no muscle in there. If this was like arm wrestling, he would lose every arm wrestling match. This guy doesn't have the strength that these heavyweights have, and that's why they're able to hold him and stick him against the cage for 1, 2, 3 rounds, or for long periods of the fight, because he physically can't get them off you. It's kind of like your bigger brother when you're smaller holding you down, and you just don't have the physical power to get out of it. And that's something Collier can turn to in this fight, holding Barnett against the cage. In this fight, Collier should have the boxing advantage, in my opinion. Chris Barnett has the footwork, has the kicks. But I'm not sold on Chris Barnett, man. This guy should be a middleweight, man. This guy should lose 80 pounds, man, and go down in weight. This guy is not strong enough. And I think Collier is the type of guy that will bully Chris Barnett against the cage, hold him there. Might even get a finish in this fight. So I'm going to go Jay Collier getting this done. I just don't see how Barnett gets it outside of a crazy highlight knockout. And I don't think that's happening this week.
Fight number 6. Let's look at Denis Tiuliulin versus Jamie Pickett. Jamie Pickett lost to Kyle Dawkins back in February. Southpaw on the feet, bit more of a leg-heavy attack, kickboxing style of stand-up. He has quick, sharp hands. He uses his range, fights from the outside, pretty athletic, athletic enough to kind of close distance pretty quickly. He keeps his hand down, hittable as a result of that. His cardio definitely looks improved, but it's definitely something that is still questionable. And he can land takedowns, almost 1.5 takedowns per fight, almost 50% accuracy at that. Takedown defense really isn't amazing, though. He's going up against, again, Denis Tiuliulin, who lost his debut to Aliaksab Kizriev. That was back in March. He's a pretty good striker. Expect him to control the center of the octagon. Primarily a boxer, from what I've seen. Really good power, though. 8 of his 10 wins are via KO, TKO. Looks a bit basic. Really isn't high activity or a high-paced striker. And interestingly, although he's Russian, I don't really see any wrestling out of him. Outside of fighting takedown attempts, just doesn't really go for it. Maybe he has it in him, but again, just doesn't really go for it offensively. I think this fight can go either way. I'm looking at Julian as having the better hands. I'm looking at Pickett as, having the quicker hands and maybe the better overall striking. Again, introducing those kicks as well. I think Pickett can potentially land takedowns here. It'll be interesting to see if he tries it or not, because again, he's not a wrestling specialist by any means. The more I think about it, though, the more I want to side with the slight underdog, Denis Tiuliulin. And the reason for that is I think he can keep this fight on the feet. Also, I think that even though his striking isn't more diverse, I do think that his kind of steady pace and his forward pressure can make his striking potentially more effective here. We've seen Jamie Pickett lose to strikers before. He allows himself to be outstruck. He absorbs more than he lands statistically. And I think Tiuliulin will be able to take advantage of that, even with his style that's fairly basic. So Denis Tiuliulin, as an underdog, I think he's going to get it done in what should be a striking match. And again, I think he does it with ring control and basic boxing.
Yeah, okay. For me, this is one of the harder fights to pick. So I'll be quick. I don't want to go into this big breakdown on this fight because I'm probably not going to watch this fight. Denis Tiuliulin, again, he has that pretty much ABC game, throws the straights, the jabs. He has a good right hand. He has a good right counter. And he just keeps marching you down, throwing the straight punches, and he could connect, and he does have some power if he connects. In his fight in the UFC, he did gas out, but I believe that was a short notice fight. So I expect his cardio to be much better in this fight. Pickett is one of the lower level guys in the UFC. So it's kind of hard to trust that guy. I see Tapology's all jumping on this guy. But I think he's going to get it done with his speed, the body kicks, and just having a more diverse game than this Denis guy. And even the takedowns, I think Jamie can go that route. But Jamie, I can't trust him. And I could see him getting knocked out. I could see him getting caught in this fight. But I'm going to go with Jamie Pickett, man. I think that he is improving in his fights. Albeit he has some losses, but I definitely see improvements. And I think he gets this one done, man. He should be the stronger guy, the more physically, the more athletic guy in this fight by far, have the speed advantage, the more diverse striking, albeit not the best striking, but he is throwing kicks. He's throwing a lot of things. So I'm going to go with Pickett here, man. You can even hold him against the cage, right? So Jamie Pickett's my pick here.
Fight number 7 of our prelims, we're looking at Jailton Almeida versus Anton Turkalj. For Almeida, 11-fight win streak after beating Parker Porter at heavyweight. That was back in May. I emphasize that heavyweight point because he is a light heavyweight fighter. Very exciting prospect. He's 31 years old, so you got to assume he's in his athletic prime at this point. He's introduced as a wrestler boxer. Good front kick, good calf kicks, pressure style on the feet, explosive takedown attempts, very physically strong. We saw him take down Parker Porter, no problem, kind of lifted him in the air, and he was outweighed in that fight by at least 40, 45 pounds, if not more. He has good wrestling, he has good top control, effective ground and pound, and he's a good grappler, right? 10 of his 16 wins were actually via submission. So very well-rounded prospect here. Anton Turkalj, on the other hand, undefeated newcomer. So that's pretty interesting. He last fought in Dana White Contender Series back in July. Kind of average on the feet from what I'm seeing. I don't really think his striking defense is that good. I don't really think his footwork is that good. He definitely wants to try to bring the fight to the ground. Kind of clinch / takedown by any means necessary. He wants to, chain the attempts together, try to get the back, again, control you against the cage if possible. A lot of this is based on his Dana White Contender Series performance, but I've seen that in his other fights as well. So I have to think that's just an intended style of his. It's interesting because this is a catchweight fight, 220 pounds. We saw Almeida weigh in right around 220 for his last fight at heavyweight, and again he looked good. Just physically, he looked good. Anton Turkalj, on the other hand, again these are two light heavyweights, 205ers. Even at 205, I don't think he looks that big. So I'm curious what he's going to look at 220, right? Although we haven't really seen Jailton Almeida tested in the UFC yet, that could always raise question marks. I just don't think Anton Turkalj is the person to test him. I'm Jailton Almeida all day on this one. I think he's better on the feet. I think he's better on the ground. I think he's stronger. And of course, at this point, more UFC experience. I understand why he's such a big favorite, and I'm siding with the favorite. Jailton Almeida is my pick.
Okay, so I know both these guys really well, man. Anton Turkalj, this guy was just on the Contender Series. I don't even think he made the. I don't think he got the contract. So it looks like he's filling in, or he was called up here for this fight. But in that fight, it showed that he's a grappler. He's his bread and butter is if you don't have grappling, he's gonna exploit that, and he's gonna out grapple you because your grappling is not there. His striking is not. He's not dangerous in the striking. But again, these are big guys, right? Any one punch can land and change the course of the fight. So, but when I look at Almeida, he's definitely a different beast, right? This guy out grapples grapplers. He out wrestles wrestlers. This guy's really good, man. Like I'm really impressed with this guy. It looks like the UFC is bringing him up slowly. They don't want to give him a big test so early. So it looks like they're really building him up. They see something in this guy, and I do as well. Letting this guy fight all these catch weights. I think he gets this one done, man. Because if Anton's a grappler and Almeida's a grappler, and Almeida's a much better grappler. If you Anton lost a grappling match, I think it's on the Tapology. It shows to Alexander Gustafsson. Like Alexander Gustafsson, like he's a good fighter, and he definitely improved his grappling. He does have grappling. I think he took John Jones down once, maybe, or he was close, but I think he got John Jones down in one of the fights in the first fight. I could be wrong, but this guy beat this guy, and Gustafsson beat him in a grappling match. That just kind of lets you know, because we know Gustafsson, he can grapple, but we know that he's not on the level of Almeida. Almeida all day, man. He's gonna crush this guy. He's gonna make it look easy. So I like Jailton Almeida to win. He's gonna finish this guy, man. I think he's gonna get this done. Submission.
Fight number 8, final fight of our prelims. We're looking at Hakeem Dawodu versus Julian Erosa. Good fight over here in the featherweight division. Hakeem Dawodu, unanimous decision win over Mike Trizano back in February. He's a quick, dynamic striker, a lot of feints, a lot of fakes, especially with that jab. He has a good long jab, good usage of cap kicks as well. Really good patience. I think that's what I like most about him is that he looks for his shot, decent striking defense, primarily uses his speed, his reflexes, his athletic advantages just in the striking overall. I like his striking speed as a counterpuncher. He puts well-timed combinations together as well. Not really a takedown threat, though. Don't expect that from him. 0 takedowns in 8 UFC fights. It's just not going to happen. Only 65% takedown defense as well in those fights. Not to say it's bad, but it is somewhat vulnerable, of course. Julian Erosa, 2-fight win streak after a split decision win versus Steve Peterson back in February. He has solid MMA stand-up. He's actually introduced as a striker, mixes up the strikes pretty well, good diversity to his striking. He has a very engaging style. Definitely keeps coming forward, keeps cutting the ring off, keeps cutting the distance off. Good consistent pace as well. Wouldn't really call him a ground specialist by any means, but I mean, we look at the numbers there 1.7 takedowns per, over 50% accuracy in terms of his takedowns, and 12 of his 30 wins are via submission. So you're looking at a good overall fighter here, a good overall UFC fighter, a good overall MMA fighter, and in general, this is a really good fight. A close fight in some ways. I think Dawodu's striking is a lot better here, though. Yes, Erosa has good pressure, Erosa has good pace, but he's a little reckless at times. I think Dawodu should be a lot faster, should be a lot cleaner, should be a lot more technical, but just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, in terms of being a KO threat. I can see Dawodu ultimately winning the striking exchanges pretty much all day in this fight. Erosa does have a bit of an equalizer with takedowns, but I think he's more of a crowd pleaser than he is a wrestler in terms of game plan. I don't really see him committing to a wrestling approach. Even if he lands a takedown or two, I just don't see him committing to that type of approach. Most of this fight stays on the feet. Hakeem Dawodu potentially lights him up on the feet, potentially hurts him. But I don't want to think that far in terms of props. In terms of making a pick, my pick is going to be Hakeem Dawodu.
Yeah, man. I was talking to you about this fight particularly. I said this is the lock of the card, man. Dawodu's gonna get this done. Erosa needs to take him to the mat, and he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that wrestling to do it. He needs to use his jiu-jitsu, his submission game to win this fight. Because on the feet, Dawodu is a problem. This guy can throw leg kicks. This guy has, and it's all technical. He's throwing power shots, all technique. He has good elbows, good punches, left, rights. He does it all, man. As far as striking goes, he's one of the better strikers in this division, pure striking. And if you can't get him to the mat, it's going to be hard to beat Dawodu unless you have striking on his level. I think this is one of the better guys in Canada, if not the best prospect in Canada. Like who else has a chance at a title in Canada aside from Dawodu, maybe Jourdain, but I think Dawodu is has a higher ceiling than a Charles Jourdain, and I think the UFC knows that, and I think they're giving him a guy in Julian Erosa that is a guy you can build your name off of, a good guy on your resume. He has close to 40 fights, But I think Dawodu gets it done. More technical strike, keep it on the feet, and I think you heard some striking, man. I think this is a shouldn't say it, man, but I think this is the lock of the card. But I think he not. There's obviously better locks, such as we'll get there, but I think this is one of the better locks at decent odds. So I'm going to go with Hakeem Dawodu to get this one done.
So finished with the prelims, moving on to the main card, where again we have 5 fights on this main card. So first fight of the main card, we're looking at Johnny Walker versus Ion Cutelaba. Johnny Walker lost to Jamal Hill back in February. Don't look now, but 1-4 in his last fights now, last 5 fights now, I should say. So there is a little bit of a concern. We know that he's a big threat early in the fight, very explosive, has a lot of power. 15 of his 18 wins are via KO TKO. 10 of those 15 wins specifically are in round one. So definitely an early threat. Only 2 of his 7 losses are via decision. So essentially, you're looking at a fighter who is finish or be finished in terms of his style. He's big for the division, 6'6", long reach, 82 inches, gonna have a 7-inch reach advantage in this fight. Again, explosive striker. I mentioned that. A lot more kicks than punches, though. He can be very unorthodox, borderline low IQ at times, dare I say. We see him try things like jumping knees, crowd pleasing types of strikes, but he's cleaned a lot of that up, though. I will give him that. He now uses the fakes and the feints a lot more in his attack. He's a lot more patient. Technique is somewhat better, a lot more methodical, but cardio still a bit of a question mark. His chin, a bit of a question mark. And just his overall striking ability is still a bit of a question mark as well. Ion Cutelaba lost to Ryan Spann back in May. Similarly to Johnny Walker, and obviously the bigger we go in weight division, the more we see this. He's a knock you out or get knocked out type of fighter. He comes forward, he walks you down, he throws a lot into his punches. He's a big explosive striker. He can land something explosive early on in the fight. Definitely has legitimate power. Also have to respect the fact that he's starting to bring more IQ into the game rather than just swinging wildly. Again, more patient on the feet. He sets things up better. And especially lately, he can incorporate that ground game when he chooses to do so. He's had 20 takedowns landed in his last 3 fights, which of course very impressive. And I think that's going to be a big key in this fight. He has really good ground and pound too to kind of seal those takedowns off. I think this fight is interesting because either guy can be knocked out, as I mentioned. They're both explosive fighters. I think both guys also have. I think it's also interesting, I should say, that both guys also have just 1 win in their last 5. I mentioned Johnny Walker's a lot more patient and methodical on the feet, but I do believe his striking is, like I said, a little bit overrated. I think the striking defense isn't amazing. I think the punches specifically are not great. It's really just explosive kicks if you really watch Johnny Walker's striking style. I think there's good value on Cutelaba here. I feel his striking style is a lot more effective, I should say. I feel his cardio is better. And again, I feel like he has a key advantage with the wrestling. I think the reason why these odds are as close as they are is because either guy can get the knockdown. So you definitely want to be careful here. I'm not going to rush to throw Cutelaba on parlays, but analytically, I think there's really good value on Cutelaba here. So he's going to be my pick, young Cutelaba, to get it done.
Yeah, this could be a trap fight because this could be a fight Johnny Walker can actually win. Um, he can actually knock this guy out, right? So he's gonna be 6'6". We can't forget his knockouts that he's had in the UFC before the meltdown. And Cutelaba leaves himself open, has cardio issues. That's a tough fight for me, man, because I'm smelling trap here, but I ended up on Cutelaba here for the reason being that I like his wrestling in this fight. Cutelaba is 28, so he's slightly younger, but he's definitely improving as a fighter. So he's definitely entering his prime. He's been in the UFC for quite a bit. This guy's been in the UFC since 2016. So we're talking about this guy debuted around 22 years old. So he grew up in the UFC, and he's a vet at this point, and he's entering his prime. He had a good fight against Dustin Jacoby. He's not going to be fighting a guy that will be looking to submit him like Ryan Spann did. And Johnny Walker, man, his chin, I can't trust that chin. Like, I do see a path for Johnny Walker to win, but I can't trust that chin. And I just think right now Cutelaba is a bit more tougher, and he has the takedown. So I got to go with Cutelaba here on paper. It says he gets it done, but I wouldn't be surprised if this. I wouldn't be surprised if Johnny Walker comes out there with a flying knee here and gets a knockout. But I think Cutelaba has more paths to win the fight.
Second fight of our main card, we're looking at Irene Aldana versus Macy Chiasson. For Aldana, it's been over a year since her last fight. She beat Yana Kunitskaya back in July 2021. Introduced as a striker, good lateral movement around the octagon. She fights from good distance, fights from the outside, light on her feet, decent jab, decent calf kick, has a sneaky straight right hand as well. That definitely has some pop on it. And speaking of the pop, gotta respect the power. 7 of her 13 wins are via KO TKO, which is not an easy thing to do for a women fighter, period, regardless of weight division. She has a good chin, decent striking defense as well. She has the IQ. She knows when to cover up. She has solid head movement. Definitely willing to engage though. As decent as her striking defense is, she's still going to absorb a lot of shots. Also, she has 84% takedown defense. Holly Holm was able to land 5 takedowns against her, but outside of that, she hasn't really given up many takedowns. So expect her takedown defense to be pretty rock solid in this one, which is relevant against Macy Chiasson, excuse me, who had a split decision win over Norma Dumont back in May. We highlighted that fight a little bit when referring to the Norma Dumont fight on the early prelims. Macy Chiasson, very tall, good reach, long punches, willing to engage. Used to be a lot more aggressive and pressing with her striking. She's now a lot more patient, better distance management as well. Again, that long jab, like I mentioned, she's going to have almost a 4-inch reach advantage in this one. She's going to throw combinations. She has some takedown defense with her long frame, but the percentages are at just 64%. It won't really matter too much in this fight, though. She can land a takedown, although I wouldn't really depend on her for that. She has landed 6, takedowns in her last fight. She's almost at 2 takedowns per, but again, just not super reliable in that area. In addition to Aldana's pretty impressive takedown defense, I feel pretty comfortable picking Irene Aldana here. And the reason I say that is because I think the movement and the distance control that Chiasson has been working on, I think that's something that Irene Aldana does very well. So you're almost playing into Irene Aldana's style by doing the things that Macy Chiasson is starting to show with the style of her own. I feel like Aldana is the better striker. I feel like she's the more dangerous striker, in my opinion, as well. And again, like I said, with Irene Aldana, I think the takedown defense is good enough to make sure that this fight stays on the feet where I feel she's better. So Irene Aldana is going to be my pick. Again, I want to say I feel comfortable picking Irene Aldana. Doesn't mean I think it's a lock, but it is something that I'm going to pay attention to. Let's see what the weigh-ins look like. Curious to see this one, but Irene Aldana is definitely someone that I have my eyes on. Irene Aldana is going to be my pick.
Yeah, I like Irene as well, man. I like Irene as well, but BBWF, don't bet women's fights, and it applies here, man, because Macy can win this fight, man. She can rough up Aldana against the cage. She can get some takedowns. Even if she gets a takedown the first round, the second round she can hold her against the cage and kind of dictate where the fight goes in that aspect, and she will win the round if she does that. And she's a big girl, man, and so there's definitely a path to win this. Aldana is not a world beater here. She can lose. She has been broken, and Chiasson, if she makes improvements, she can run away with this fight. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Chiasson wins this fight, but I have to make a pick here again. BBWF, don't bet women's fights. And I like Aldana striking, man. It's more cleaner. And I think when Chiasson tries to kind of get in the clinch to lead to a takedown or lead to getting pushed against the cage, Aldana has good movement to move sideways and kind of get away from that center and avoid that grappling, right? So, and that's all she needs to do is avoid the grappling. And if she's in her training camp, just training to avoid the grappling, and it's not like she's fighting some high level Brazilian jiu-jitsu ace. This is just Macy Chiasson. So Aldana should have enough to, if she gets taken down the first round, she should have enough in the second, third round to avoid the takedown and run away with the striking here. So I got to go with Aldana, but DBWF, don't bet women's fights. And I wouldn't be surprised Chiasson gets this one done. I wouldn't be surprised. She definitely has an avenue here to make this a really, really ugly fight. A lot of dirty boxing and takedowns, right? So, but I got to go with Aldana here to get the win.
All right, so let's move on to our third fight. We have Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. Catchweight fight. I'm not sure what weight this is announced at, so that's interesting. But nonetheless, Kevin Holland 2-fight win streak. He beat Tim Means back in June. Good kickboxing. He's going to use all of his length. Has a reach advantage against most guys that he's up against. 7-inch reach advantage in this fight specifically. He's quick on the feet. He has solid striking IQ. He can either strike first or he can play the role of counterpuncher. Decent clinch as well. Decent elbows, knees in range, things like that. Good grappler. Let's not forget he is a BJJ black belt, has good ground IQ. We know that his biggest weakness has been his wrestling, just 50% takedown defense. But we also know that it's an area of his game that he has been actively working on. I don't think that'll be a point of emphasis in this fight specifically, though, but always got to mention that with Kevin Holland. Daniel Rodriguez, on the other hand, is on a 3-fight win streak, though he hasn't competed since August of last year when he beat Kevin Lee. Southpaw, good hands, good stand-up, good boxing specifically. Technique is solid. Good jab, uses it a lot. Straight punches are very effective. He's just good at throwing combinations. He's going to mix in some kicks, but primarily boxing. Legitimately good takedown defense. Again, won't matter in this fight, but always worth mentioning for Daniel Rodriguez. 83% on paper. Just a solid overall fighter. Consistent. You know what you're going to get from Daniel Rodriguez whenever you see his name on the bill. This is a good fight. I think it's a close fight. I think you can make a case for either fighter in this fight, but ultimately I'm going to side with Kevin Holland. And the reason I say that is because I can anticipate similarities to Kevin Holland versus Joaquin Buckley, if you remember that fight. I can see Kevin Holland being the more elusive fighter, using his speed, using his movement, using his reach to his advantage. Continuing on that note, I can see him avoiding the danger the way he was for the most part against Joaquin Buckley, while still having explosive moments of his own where he's coming forward and he's willing to engage and willing to land combinations and things like that. Again, Holland's going to have a 7-inch reach advantage here. Ultimately, I think that's going to be the difference in this fight in what could otherwise be a close striking match. But the quickness, the lateral movement, the reach, the height, I feel like those are going to be just too big of advantages for Kevin Holland for the style of fighter that Daniel Rodriguez is going to present to him, which is a fairly, I don't say basic in a bad way, but fairly straightforward type of fighter in Daniel Rodriguez. I think Kevin Holland's going to be able to take advantage of that. So I'm looking at Kevin Holland to get it done. But again, you can make a case for either fighter here, but Kevin Holland is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is the other hard fight for me to pick. Daniel Rodriguez is a dog man. This guy, very active striker, good power, and in this fight, he's gonna have the wrestling advantage if he decides to take it there. Now, he definitely wants to stand up. He definitely thinks he's a better striker. Technically, he might have a claim to being the more technical guy. And one thing that Holland likes to throw is that that jab. And Rodriguez has a really good counter to go over the top, right? So there's aspects in this fight where Rodriguez can shine, and it's a matter of who catches who first. And when you look at Holland, it's the same thing, right? This guy has a deadly straight that's knocking people out, piston-like, very fast, snapping, and it's finishing guys. Tim Means, it's finished Buckley. These are guys that we thought were hard to finish. So we got to remember that this guy Holland has a lot of power, and big advantage Holland has in this fight is the speed. is the reflexes, the speed, and so you can definitely win the fight here. And when you look at the record here, who he's lost to, he lost to guys that had to take him down. The only guy that really beat him, like striking, was 2018 Thiago Santos. All right, so you have to really go back, right, to look at the fact that Holland has looked really good. You haven't really seen him look bad in the striking areas of fights. He adapts to these fights and eventually he gets the finish. He has a win against what's the guy's name that beat Luque, man? What's that guy's name? But if you go down before the UFC, he has a win against Jeff Neal. Finish him, broke him, third round TKO. So he finds a way, right? So I think he's gonna get this one done, man. Like it's hard because both of them aren't the best striking defensively. They both get hit. They both have their hands down. But I'm gonna go with Holland here. Lean slightly towards Holland with the speed. That straight punch is gonna be a factor in this fight. And I wouldn't be surprised he gets a finish here. So I like Holland here to get the win.
Fight number 4, co-main event of the evening. We have Li Jingliang versus Tony Ferguson. For Jingliang, he beat Muslim Salikov back in July. That was via KO. A lot of fakes and feints with his striking. Kind of tries to go for that timing, plays more of a counter puncher role. Essentially, he's going to try to lure you in for the counter. He can come in, he can engage with combinations too, though. He can be the aggressor, he can control center of the octagon, also has a really solid jab and just good striking technique overall. Gotta respect his power. 9 of his 19 wins are via KO, TKO. And although his takedown numbers don't jump out the page, 1.27 takedowns per, 40% accuracy, with his ground game, he has that ability to kind of play that smothering wrestling type of role, where he'll stay on you, where he'll, really have top control, decent ground and pound to go along with it. Just positionally stay in advantageous spots. He has that ability to sort of play that role. Though he only has 60% takedown defense to go with that. But offensively, he has that capability from a wrestling perspective. Tony Ferguson lost to Michael Chandler, of course. That was back in May. We know he's on a 4-fight losing streak at this point. 38 years old. Definitely past his prime, but he didn't look bad. He didn't look bad in his last fight versus Michael Chandler, of course, leading up to the knockout, which was early in the second round. He looked pretty good in the first round. That said, or to that point, I should say, he has that switch stance style, still a very unorthodox striker. Good punch kick combinations, kind of just switch it up, diversify it however the way he wants to. Almost a borderline capoeira style at times, which presents timing problems for his opponents. His hands are really accurate. We saw that in the Michael Chandler fight, and the power is still a bit underrated. He dropped Michael Chandler. I think it was with a jab or a straight, if I'm not mistaken. We know Tony Ferguson's a really good grappler, especially off of his back. So you definitely can't fall asleep even in top position against him. All that said, I do think Jingliang is the smarter pick here. I think he's the much smarter pick here. Tony can definitely still keep up on the feet. I think they'll both have moments early in the fight, but I like that Jingliang can get the takedown. We know that Tony has been taken down in his fights, just 66% takedown defense. But even just going back to the striking, I think, again, this fight could be somewhat similar to Jingliang's last fight versus Muslim Salikov, in that Jingliang, he did a lot of controlling, kept a higher pace. He was using that fake feint, counter punch, but still be the aggressor type of style, to a point where he eventually landed that fight-changing punch that led to the finish. I can see something very similar happening in this fight, though both guys will have their moments early in the fight. I think at some point, Jingliang will catch Tony. Will Tony be finished? We don't know. He's super tough. But will it be a fight-changing punch? Yes, I think so. So Jingliang is going to be my pick. It's also the bigger guy. Tony Ferguson's last fight, yes, we know He's fought at welterweight many times, but Tony Ferguson's last fight was at 155. Lingjing Liang, legitimate welterweight. So I'm expecting him to be the bigger guy as well. Yeah, Lingjing Liang is going to be my pick to get it done.
Yeah, this is a crazy fight because I see a lot of different things, man. I look at Ferguson and I see a guy that's more well rounded. I think Ferguson has the better grappling, the better wrestling. I think Ferguson's going to be the better grappler. In this fight, I wouldn't be surprised. Ferguson locks up his Darce choke and gets a finish here, right? So there are spots in this fight that if Ferguson can get the fight there, he can finish this guy. Jingling Liang, I'm sorry, Li Jing Lang. This guy, good fighter, dangerous. But we saw what Neil Magny did to him. Neil Magny made him look very. He made him look, man. He made him look amateurish in that fight. The way Neil Magny was able to take him down and control that fight. And you got to think Tony Ferguson is definitely capable. But it's a matter of what's going to happen. We don't know, right? We don't know what Tony's going to look like in this fight. We don't know what strategy he's going to come with in this fight. But based on his previous performances, you look at guys that he's fought. He stands in there. He wants to stand with these guys. These guys are taking him down, but he wants to stand. And I think standing against Jinglang Li is going to be a problem here because Lee's hard to knock out. That's number one. He has a good chin, and he has really, really good power. So he should get this done here. He should win the fight. He's going to be my pick. But again, these odds are these odds. I don't think Vegas knows. Like I don't think anyone knows what Tony's going to look like at welterweight. And it's not like he's fighting a Chandler, a Dariush, a Oliveira, a Gagey, like guys that are that well rounded. He's fighting a guy that has that power in his hands, good striking, but everything else in his game, his submission defense, his submission game, his wrestling, it's lacking. And Tony has advantages in those areas he didn't have in those 4 fights that he lost. This is his 4 fight losing streak. So this is a bigger guy. Tony's going to be bigger as well. But skill wise, this is a guy that just really has that one avenue with the striking to win, either by knockout or decision. While Tony can win by submission, can get some wrestling going, can get a takedown to steal a round. Tony has a more well-rounded skill set. So I'm still going with Jingliang Li because I think Tony's chin can't handle the punch. But I wouldn't be surprised if Ferg comes back and gets the win here.
All right, let's move on then to our main event of the evening. We have Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz. For this fight, Khamzat Chimaev still undefeated, of course, after he beat Gilbert Burns back in April. Really battle tested in that one. We know that Chimaev is capable on the feet, good technique, good stalking movement, good power. We know that he goes at a pretty high, overwhelming pace, especially early in the fight. He has excellent takedowns, good entries, good body lock, chain wrestling, all that good stuff, Dagestani style. Excellent top control, good ground and pound as well. Most importantly, physically strong, especially for a welterweight. We know that he's somebody who can very much fight at middleweight, but the welterweight limit. So, definitely physically strong. He mainly has an unlimited cardio tank. We saw that tested versus Gilbert Burns, of course, but he showed resilience in that fight. He showed a chin as well in that fight. And he showed the ability to, continue going despite facing adversity. Nate Diaz lost to Leon Edwards. That was back in June 2021. Southpaw. I don't really want to say a pressure style, but he's more of a sort of constant pressure, accumulation, active hands type of approach. He's going to use his length and his strikes. He has good boxing, though I wouldn't really say his striking technique is the greatest in general. He's comfortable on his back. We know he can grapple. He'll look for clinch situations when he gets the opportunity to. And we know he has the unlimited cardio, the unlimited toughness. But honestly, I'll keep this short. Don't even really need to extend on this anymore. I don't really give Nate Diaz any chance in this fight. We've heard the commentary surrounding this fight, Nate didn't even want the fight, right? He wanted a number of 155ers. I think he wanted Chandler. He wanted Poirier. What was the clip that was floating around on Instagram and Twitter? He didn't even want this fight. He just kind of took it after unsuccessfully calling for a bunch of other fights at 155, and now going up against a Chimaev at welterweight, who is somebody that also fights at middleweight. So that's a problem here. I think Khamzat should be too big, too strong. I can honestly see him getting Nate out of here early. And even if he doesn't, we know that the value in Nate is what he did to Connor, right? Late in the fight, choke him out, it's done. I don't see Nate having the ability to do that here. I don't think Chimaev will be that gassed, even if he didn't finish the fight early. I know it's a 5 rounder. I know it's question marks, but yeah, I don't see Nate Diaz as having a chance at all here. Khamzat Chimaev all day.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, this is man, I can't believe they're even doing this fight, man. This is a disgrace to the UFC because as you indicated, Nate didn't want the fight, and in that interview you mentioned like I think it was 4 or 5 fighters he was willing to fight. Poirier, a couple other guys. Well, one guy that he mentioned is fighting on this card is Tony Ferguson. So they could have made that fight. And instead, they're lining up Tony Ferguson to fight this Chinese monster, and they're lining up Nate to fight this Russian monster. So it's like it's crazy that these guys put on wars for the UFC, helped the UFC get to where it is with the brawls that Ferguson had, Nate had. These guys have a big fan base, both of them, and they're lining them up to get crushed like pop cans, man. This is crazy to me, man. It's crazy. It's a crazy it's a crazy business. But make the pick quick. Cam's out all day. He should be able to get some takedowns. Man, I really do want Nate to win the fight. Like I hope Khamzat gets injured, sprains an ankle, and Nate wins the fight. I hope something happens, like something crazy like that. Because the way UFC is doing this, I hope Ferguson and Nate win the fight, even though I went the other way. But I'm gonna go Khamzat for the channel. Keep my record shining. Year to date, you guys got to check that. But Khamzat's my pick here.
All right, so let's take it to Vegas at that point. And let's consider underdog action. I will, of course, read them out. Yohan Lainesse is an underdog versus Darian Weeks. Elise Reed is an underdog. Chad Anheliger, Danielle Wolf, Chris Barnett, Denis Tiuliulin, Anton Turkalj, Julian Erosa, Johnny Walker, Macy Chiasson, Daniel Rodriguez, Tony Ferguson, and Nate Diaz.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Yohan Lainesse.
Okay, I'm gonna echo that. So I'll save the time there. That's an even money underdog, Yohan Lainesse. So there's some agreement there. And in terms of parlays or kind of favorite picks, what are you taking a look at?
All right, parlay wise, what are the odds on the Khamzat Chimaev?
1.1.
Wow, what are the odds on the what's the other one I was looking at? What's the odds on the okay, I got my pick. I'm gonna go with Jailton Almeida. What's his odds?
1.15.
Okay. You know what? Yo, Jailton Almeida, Khamzat Chimaev. Okay, put those on because I know the odds suck, but we're gonna add up. We're gonna do some math. We're gonna also throw in there Hakeem Dawodu. What does that pay right there?
1.83.
And I'm gonna go with Ling Jiang Lang.
All right. So those 4 fights, that would be a 2.38 overall. So that means that $100 will get you a total return of 238 for our bigger bettors. $250 will get you a total return of 595. As you're building that out there, I will mention that's kind of the theme on this card is that finding valuable bets is not as easy as it seems. I'm definitely going to echo Chimaev and Almeida, despite how bad those odds are. those two are highly likely to win their fights, and you kind of have to have that on your card, in my opinion. The other fights I'm going to go with is almost uncharacteristic because they're both a little cautionary. Jake Collier, that's a heavyweight caution. Norma Dumont, that's a women's fight caution. But those are the four that I'm looking at. Again, hard to come by a big payout, but most importantly, we want to make sure that our listeners are winning. And I think that these four will get it done. So again, Jailton Almeida comes at Chimaev, Jake Collier, Norma Dumont. That would pay 1.93, so almost even money. Not the most impressive ticket I've ever made, but here we are. $100 will return a total of 193. For our bigger bettors, $250 will return a total of 484. So let's sign off on that note. Really curious to hear from the listeners in the comments on this one. Let us know how you feel about our picks. Let us know what picks you're potentially looking at, what parlays you're looking at, what underdogs you're looking at. While you're at it, please make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks and press the thumbs up on this video. Officially signing off, this has been UFC 279, Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz, presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zahn, I go by Harris, and in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's do it.